Okay, we're going to call this Planning and Zoning Commission session in order, call to order. First here on the agenda is consider approval of the minutes for the July 13th, 2021 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting and take any action as necessary. Do I hear a motion to accept the?
I move that we approve the minutes as read.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we got a presentation and discussion by Kimberly Horn and Associates, the Mount Pleasant Comprehensive Plan 2021 Update, Plan Mount MP 2040.
Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission, tonight we're going to do a brief presentation. It's sort of a kickoff meeting for the Planning and Zoning Commission. We just did the Parks Board, and we want to just introduce you to the consultant and give you kind of an overview of how the process is going to work and essentially what your part is in it. We're going to be reviewing this as we go along and seeing how we move through the process. And the consultant, again, is going to do a presentation for you. This is something that, we haven't done in approximately 20 years. And we're at the sort of a turning point now with, I think, with development in Mount Pleasant, and seems to be getting a substantial amount of obviously residential things happening, and we're also starting to get some people wanting to develop properties on the loop, out to the new loop. We had one development that's occurred already. So there's things along corridors like I-30 and whatnot we want to look at now with some potential development, and up north where we have more residential development occurring. So the city in general needs to look at what they want the city to look like in the next 20, 25 years. And this is an opportunity for us to do that. Along with that, the parks plan, every 5 years or so, we need to look at our parks plan for funding, be able to fund things, grant things. And also we're at a point now too in development that I think when we look at developments, we need to look at how the connectivity throughout the city to the parks, what we might want to consider how our trails connect, and our bike trails possibly, and just a general get a handle on how we want the city from this point on to develop. And even in the older neighborhoods, how we want to characterize those and how we want to see how those might redevelop. So there's a lot to the comp plan, and I don't want to speak anymore tonight, but the consultant's going to go over the process and how we're going to get started with it and give you a brief real quick.
Sorry about that. So thank you, Robert, and members of Mount Pleasant Planning and Zoning Commission. My name is Mark Bowers. I'm very pleased to be here this evening. I am the project manager for the Comprehensive Plan and Parks and Open Space Master Plan on the consultant side. I am a planner and a landscape architect with Kimberly Horn. I'm out of the Dallas office, but I've worked on comprehensive plans and park and open space master plans for communities around the state of Texas, all sizes of communities, and I'm real pleased to be working in Mount Pleasant. So along with me at many of our meetings, you will see a couple of other individuals. So Abra Nusser, who is a planner with Kimberly Horn, as well as Madison Graham, who is a planner with Kimberly Horn. Both have a strong background in community planning and doing citywide planning. But I want to point out that there are a whole lot more people behind the scenes that are working with us. Some of them may show up at some of the workshops that we'll have going on, but people with very different technical abilities and focus on various areas. If you think about a community like Mount Pleasant, it's not just about land use. It's about land use and where are the utilities and where can we serve the community with utilities, where are the roads with capacity. There's a whole lot of thinking that needs to go into these types of plans, and we got the resources lined up to be able to support it. So really starting point on this is our target is going to be on establishing a vision, a community-wide vision and a consensus on the vision. And I typically tell communities at the end of the day, if the community is saying you know, the consultant came in and they developed their vision and we have this plan, I'm not quite sure what's in it, we didn't do a very good job. At the end of the day, the vision we're trying to create is Mount Pleasant's vision. What is your vision? What are your constituents in the community? What's their vision? What do they want this community to be? Because that's something they can get excited about and that they will want to see implemented. I also tell folks quite a bit, it's while we need to develop this plan and more importantly, the specific strategies to implement the plan with short, mid, and long-term strategies, my understanding about what you're really after is the built environment that comes out of it afterwards. So what do we need to do to implement it to get that built environment? And this plan is really just a roadmap to start to get there. It's going to have that overall vision, but that vision will trickle down into policy and direction on land use, on looking at infrastructure, on economic development, on the regulatory environment, and all of those types of things. At the end of the day, I will also say that we need to set that bar based on Mount Pleasant's value system. I've worked in some communities that are very strong on regulation and they want to see a whole lot of regulation in their document. And then I've worked in places like Kerrville, Texas, where they say, you know, we want to do the minimum we got to do to get good quality, but and make sure that everybody has a rule book to play by, but we don't want to overburden our businesses with a lot of regulations. So that's part of it too, not just the vision, but helping understand where that bar might need to be set going forward that's appropriate for Mount Pleasant. So we developed a strategic plan working with City Council. My team member Abra Nusser did that earlier this year. And a strategic plan, unlike a comprehensive plan, while there is a long-term goal that comes out of a strategic plan, it's really focused on strategies that need to be in place over the next 2 to 3 years. What are the things that the community is trying to accomplish? What are the things that council wants to undertake and make sure they get done in the short term? So through that process, there were several, there were 10 two-year goals that were established, and 2 of those 2-year goals are related to this process. Number 1, a goal was to update the comprehensive plan. So that's part of the reason we're doing this is through those strategic sessions with council. That was one of the key goals that they had. Number 7 on the list, you'll see develop a Parks and Recreation Master Plan. So what we have done is developed a process in which those 2 things are going to be accomplished at the same time using the same touch points with the community. We've seen some mistakes in some communities in the past where they'll have a Parks and Open Space Master Plan going on over here and inviting people, and then they got a downtown plan and they've got a comp plan and all of these things going on, and people are confused about, well, how do these relate to each other? So while there's 2 different plans being developed, we've got one process and kind of one brand for the planning process so that the community knows if I go to this survey or if I go to this meeting, I'm having input on all of those areas. Does that make sense? Okay. So how do these plans fit into the strategic plan? So that strategic plan is really at the highest level, working with council to say, what are the shorter term goals? What do we want to accomplish over the next 2 years? A comprehensive plan is typically a 20 to 30 year plan. Now, does that mean that we've got a crystal ball and we know what's going to happen 30 years from now? Absolutely not. But what it does do is helps the community look further out. And I'll give an example. Years ago, I was working on a comprehensive plan along the Trinity River corridor in Dallas. And if you think about that, there's a lot of older industrial uses. There's some junkyards, things like that down there. And we talk to those business owners and say, what do you want the future to be for this area? And they'd say, I want to do exactly what I'm doing now and stay out of my way. I don't want you messing that up. And then I'd say, okay, what do you want this to be 40 years from now or 30 years from now? Well, I hope I can retire, and it would be great if I could sell this business and sell this property And if this could redevelop and I could get a lot more money than I do today, then you've got people thinking about the future without those blinders on why it can't happen, or that's a threat to me if that happens. So that's why we encourage people to look further out. It's not to say we're going to be perfect and 2040 or 2050 is the key year and we're predicting the future. It's more to get people to take those blinders off and look to the future. So the comprehensive plan will be looking into that future. It will look at the 15 to 20 year outlook, and then the Parks and Recreation Plan, so where the comprehensive plan provides the overall vision and it trickles down into land use and economic development, the Parks and Open Space Plan is also responding to that vision. So in order to support that comprehensive plan, what types of parks do we need? More neighborhood parks, community parks, where do they need to be located? And in talking to the Parks Board just a few minutes ago, I was sharing that we do all of this through an economic lens. We feel like this investment in a comprehensive plan should have a return on investment. We really believe that this planning process is a good business strategy. By investing in this process, we are developing strategies to develop special places in the community that may attract businesses in the future. The Parks and Open Space system is part of that as well. So one of the key things we hear from our clients that are locating in communities with businesses, with industry, is they're looking for places that have a high quality of life for their employees. So some of the first things they'll ask is, how's the school district? What are the schools like? And what kind of parks do they have? What do they have for people to do fun for families? So again, I would suggest that investment in your parks needs to be strategic, but it can be an investment in economic development and attracting business in the future. So now the overall timing for the plan. So as we look at this, we'll look at what we want the city to be in the future. We'll get a lot of feedback from the community and their perceptions of how the community is now and things that they'd like to see in the future. And then the plans will include prioritized action plans for real progress. Related to the implementation strategy, we've seen a lot of plans developed through the years that sit on a shelf. So people will say, okay, we've got this plan, but we don't know how they came up with these ideas. And we're not really following it because it doesn't make any sense. So really part of the process of getting buy-in from the community is making sure that it is the community's vision, and it makes it a whole lot easier to follow that roadmap and make sure it gets implemented, because the community wants to see those things happen. But we also develop specific implementation strategies that say, in order to achieve this, in the first 2 years, here are some specific things that ought to occur. And in years 3 to 5, these specific things you should look at taking on, so that there's a roadmap to implement the plan back to get to that promised land of the built environment that you're trying to achieve with the plan. So the approach we take, we first listen. We're starting that process now. We're going to be having some stakeholder interviews, an online survey. It will also be a paper survey. But we really want to get a feel through these various techniques of what people's perceptions are today. So we want to listen a whole lot day one. And at the same time, we want to look at some of your existing conditions from a mapping standpoint. Where's the roadway capacity? What's the condition of roads? Where's your water and wastewater? Where can you serve? Where do you have difficulty serving? So that we can really strategize on how the community might grow best, and then align those things with what the folks in the community want to see. We define what it is we're trying to solve. So what are the issues that need to be overcome that we want to solve for? We come up with ideas to create the vision, and then we look at potential solutions and ranges of solutions to those problems that might be identified, and then we test those to see which ones are the best fit for the needs that you have. So from a more standpoint of the way a timeline will run, we start off with a kickoff and existing conditions analysis. That's where we do a lot of the listening sessions with the community in the survey. And then we go into a visioning and analysis phase to where we work with the community to provide ideas for what they want to see in the future. We develop strategies and we test those strategies to achieve that vision. And then we draft the plan for review and discussion. It's very important that the plan be reviewed in the community because we want to hear that if there was something we didn't hear properly, if there was an idea and we misunderstood what folks were thinking, we want them to review and be able to say, no, we really meant this, because we want to make sure that we're hitting the target at the end of the process. And then ultimately, public hearings and adoption. Your role in that, obviously, as a recommendation board will be to review the comprehensive plan, hold a public hearing, provide your input, and hopefully recommend the plan for adoption to City Council. Methods of community engagement. I talked a whole lot about how important hearing from the community and their ideas is to this process. There are really three buckets that we pull from. The traditional, there's still a lot of folks that like the hands-on approach, the hands-on survey that they can fill out with a pencil, but we utilize mailings, utility bill stuffers to get the word out about what's going on, community signage, press releases, newspaper notices. But then we also have in-person workshops. So some of those things may be advertising an upcoming workshop where people can come in, and we have citizens working with other citizens around tables to share ideas, come up with consensus on direction. We tee up some key exercises in those meetings. The first meeting will be very interactive with discussions. The second one is typically more, okay, based on the ideas you shared, we've started to develop the plan. We ask additional questions, but we get feedback on if we're going the right direction. And then the final meeting is really focused on, we're getting close to the final plan. We want to make sure that we're on target. What changes do we need to make? And then that final one online, I always look at that as the opportunity for the folks that work the third shift, or a mom that has small kids and can't go to a meeting on a Thursday night or whatever day of the week it is, or a family that has soccer practice on a Saturday morning if we're having a meeting and can't attend the meeting. So that's really the opportunity for folks at any time it's convenient for them to go on and go through some exercises to be able to share their feedback with us. So we think we got a pretty robust platform with those three buckets to be able to engage people in a number of ways, however it's most comfortable to them. So that interactive website, essentially, it creates an opportunity for collaborative engagement. We'll make periodic updates to it through the course of the project that start to highlight the new things that have been developed or new ideas that have been shared with us. Again, it's got a 24/7 comment form and a live project timeline. So that will really be the main place that folks can find information about the project and have interaction with the project at any time. So the meetings, we're going to have 3 technical advisory committee meetings. Technical advisory committee is essentially city staff. So those department heads, those folks that really understand the inner workings and the issues that they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, we want to make sure they're engaged as well to share some of those stories with us. We've got 3 comprehensive plan advisory committee meetings, or CPAC we'll call them, that will occur through the process. 3 parks and recreation board meetings that'll be more focused, not so much on the comp plan, but on the parks and recreation master plan. 2 planning and zoning commission meetings, and then 4 city council meetings will take place through the course of the project, and then 3 in-person community forums. So the methods with the community forum, we have Community Forum 1 will really be the kickoff with the entire community, where we go through a SWOT analysis, but we also utilize the results that we get from the community survey to structure activities based upon what we're understanding from the community related to issues and preferences. Community Forum 2 is the public design forum, where we're really starting to come up with a lot of ideas related to the future of the community. And then number 3 is going through the draft concepts and highlights and getting feedback on if we're going the right direction. Comprehensive plan chapters, there's the overall introduction. It'll have an economic vitality chapter, land use and design, mobility and connectivity, infrastructure, resources, and energy, city services and facilities, and a part of the Parks and Recreation. That will be a standalone plan and report alongside this plan. And then implementation and monitoring, the implementation strategy, and how do we monitor the plan to make sure it's on track. Chapters of the Parks and Recreation Plan, it's a little bit shorter. I guess the key takeaway for Parks and Recreation is it's being structured in a way that meets the requirements of Texas Parks and Wildlife. The reason for that is because Texas Parks and Wildlife has grants available to communities, matching funds for park improvements. So it's in your best interest to structure it in a manner that if you want to go after those funds, as well as any other resources, to have that type of structure in place. Finally, elected and appointed officials role, again, provide direction at key points in the process. We ask you to attend the community forums. We think it would be great if you can attend all of them, not just to participate, but also to hear what your neighbors are saying. You're a representative body. You represent your constituents, so we want to make sure that you're hearing things firsthand. And if we come to a point where we're working with you and say, that's not what I heard at the community meeting, we're having those discussions so we can change course if we need to. Ambassadors, we need you to spread the word in your neighborhood, whether it's your physical neighborhood, your business neighborhood, or through social media that you may be involved with. The more people we can get involved in this process, the better the plan's going to be, and it will represent Mount Pleasant. Share feedback at all stages, either directly with the consultant team or with staff in between meetings. If there's something that comes to mind, please share it with Robert or other staff, and they will get that information to us. And then finally, to be a champion and support not just the final plan, but a champion for implementation. You're looking at development proposals come in front of you on a regular basis, and so we want you to understand the commitment the community made to developing the plan and have a firsthand knowledge of it, so that as you review these things, you'll have a feel for whether it's in alignment with what the community says they want to see in Mount Pleasant and the overall comp plan. And then specific role of the CPAC, it's, I touched on several of these things, but with the overall officials role. Advisory committee. So last week, the council did appoint an advisory committee. So again, while you folks will be a part of the process in your board role, there is a committee made up of citizens, business owners, various constituencies within Mount Pleasant. There are 17 members on the committee, and we will be working very closely with them as representatives of those multi aspects of your community to be able to provide us feedback and help guide the direction of the plan as we go through the process in between meetings. Parks and Recreation Board, it's a similar role to the Planning and Zoning Commission role, except their focus will be on the Park and Recreation Master Plan. So we will be having those separate meetings with them that are just park specific as we go through the process. Tentative timeline. So we've already started the process of getting feedback and direction. And then we're setting up some stakeholder interviews. We've been talking to city staff. We've drafted a community survey that is currently live. It will be going live on the city website probably in the next day or two to be able to engage and start sharing your opinions right now. We talked to Robert and Ed today, and we'll very likely be getting some hard copies of that for folks that want to take the hard copy survey rather than doing it on their iPhone or something like that. Then that will be closing in September. October, we will be having Community Forum number 1. And then following that forum, then we'll be doing some synthesis on the data we get back from that meeting. We'll have additional meetings with the boards and commissions, and then we'll be coming back in January, February after the holidays for Community Forum number 2. where we really start to draft design ideas and what the future can be for the plan. We then draft the plan in February and March of 2022. We take the plan out to the community at Community Forum number 3 in the spring of 2022, get feedback, see if we're hitting the mark. Where we aren't, we want to make tweaks to the plan, and then ultimately do any final plan refinement following that meeting in May of next year, and then potential adoption in the summer of next year, beginning with Parks Board for the Parks Plan. We will bring both plans forward to you for recommendation, and then ultimately City Council will have the final public hearing. Next steps. So we are still in the process of evaluating existing conditions. Again, back to where floodplain areas, where are roadways that have issues, capacity, looking at your utility infrastructure, looking at existing land uses, conditions of neighborhoods, all of those types of things, and really starting to get a feel for the physical environment here. We're also working with that outreach in the community with the survey to get some initial ideas and perspectives from the community, because that needs to align with the existing conditions so that that's two pieces of the puzzle along with economic conditions in the community. And then we're about to move forward over the next month with stakeholder interviews and then systems planning meetings for the Parks and Recreation Plan. There's a needs assessment that's going to be required by Texas Parks and Wildlife to be a part of that process. So we'll be starting that process as well. So at this point, I would like to entertain any questions. I've been doing a lot of talking. I'll take a breath and answer your questions the best I can.
No, we don't have any questions. You did a good job.
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to share this information with you. Really looking forward to working with all of you over the next 9 months or so, and we're excited about the project, so thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move to item number 4. Hold a public hearing to consider the request of Jose Martin Reyes and Gilberto Perez, applicant owners for the thoroughfare closure of 11-foot alley right-of-way adjacent to lots 1, 2, 3, and 4, Block 100, Mount Pleasant City Block. That is TCAD ID number 17220 and 127. Oh, I'm sorry, 12720 and 12719. City of Mount Pleasant, Titus County, Texas, located north of West 5th Street between North Edwards Avenue and Caldwell Avenue. And then we'll take any action as necessary.
Mr. Chairman and members, as you stated, this is a request been submitted for what we call a thoroughfare right-of-way closure. And it's primarily this 11-foot alley that exists. That's 6th Street, 5th Street, and it's kind of between Edwards and Caldwell Avenue. The owners of each one of these homes on the north side, they actually own the adjacent properties, and essentially this has not been used as an alley. It's just been never has been used as an alley, essentially. And what they've done is they actually, I think there's been a fence permit, or the fence has been even permitted to be built across it just to include it into their property. And so at this time, I don't think the city has any issue with that, but this is the formal, we don't have any utilities in this alley or any other, or any access into it. So essentially it's not being used that way. There's the plat that it was platted at, and that's where it comes up with the 11-foot alley. And actually 11-foot alley is not a really good way to access anything anyway. You can't hardly get down an 11-foot alley. So that's primarily the concern here. We don't have an issue with it. The city, what we do is formally go through a process, go to city council with your recommendation to them for closure. We will go through a quit claim deed process with the attorney, and then the applicant will have to, each applicant will file hopefully just one replat that replats those into 2 lots, and then officially closes that alley. So However, this is a public hearing. We have to hold 2 public hearings in case there's individuals that want to speak on this, and I'll be glad to answer any questions of staff, but you do need to open a public hearing.
Okay. Y'all have any questions of Robert? Okay. All right. Do we have any public comments or questions anybody like to ask? All right. I hear a motion to accept the taking of the 11-foot alley between the property owners. That what's happening? Closure.
I'll make a motion that we close the alley as requested.
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, that's done. Okay, we'll move to, we ready to go? Item number 5, hold a public hearing to consider the request of Leonard Rockwell, applicant owner, for the zoning change from single-family residential district to commercial district on 3.677 acre tract of land situated in the J.W. Graves Survey, abstract number 246, Titus County, Texas, in the city of Mount Pleasant, and being all the remainder of the tract to Amos Rockwell in a deed found in volume 271, page 157 of the deed of records in Titus County, and all of the remainder of the first tract and all the remainder of the second tract conveyed to Amos Rockwell in a deed found in volume 172, page 402 of the deed records of Titus County, and generally located on the north side of Tennyson Road, east of US 271, South Jefferson Avenue, and take any action as necessary.
Mr. Chairman, members, the applicant is Leonard Rockwell. He represents the other family members that have basically inherited this property collectively, but they have collective ownership of the property. He's basically the executor to this ownership at this time, and the family would like to. The intent is to change the zoning map up there. This is the current zoning, and you can see this is zoned as SF1, single family 1, but it's surrounded primarily by commercial property. I think this initial apartment complex that was put in here is the Cypress Spring Apartments that was built, but they actually zoned this property, and I think it might have been collective zoning at the time. I wasn't here then, but this is the Walmart property, and they collect it. It's zoned general retail, but this property was also zoned general retail, which allows that zoning also allows for multifamily to be built into it, as does commercial. Now, the Cypress Springs ownership owns this property also here. I think this was intended to be phase 2 of Cypress Springs, which hasn't occurred yet and may occur in the future. But that what it ended up doing is surrounding this, what was a residential property that's no longer occupied with this commercial property around it. So, a sense that the zoning kind of makes sense that the applicant would want to zone this to be either allow some other uses or feasibility of multifamily apartment complex or some other type of multifamily that could go in there. So that's essentially what they're asking for the zoning change, which makes sense. The zone is because of the surrounding zoning. Now, one caveat to this is that should there be we've got certain things that fall into the multifamily category, but if, for instance, if it was garden homes or some other variety of homes that would have to fall into that category, it becomes single ownership, not necessarily rental, single ownership. It would allow that, but it would have to probably come back to you in the form of a planned development district. We'd have to do that way, because then we would actually be doing smaller lots that aren't in our regular residential code, but they'd still be single lot ownership. I don't think that's really an issue, except that may be something that comes back. But this is the moment gives them the flexibility to look at multifamily as what's occurring out there right now. And as you know, then further in the next couple of cases, you're going to see the same thing happening with other multifamily requests out there. So with that being said, again, this is a public hearing, and there may be folks here to speak on behalf of this request, so I'll be glad to answer any questions of staff at this time.
Any questions for Robert? Okay, no questions. Then we open it to the public. Any comments or anything? Okay. Does anybody want to comment? So do I get a recommendation to? Huh? Okay, we can we'll close the public hearing, and do I hear a motion to accept this, to change it to commercial?
I make a motion to accept.
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Now we'll go to item number 6. Hold a public hearing to consider the request of Emanuel Glockzin, applicant for the zoning change from single-family residential district to multifamily district on a 4.37 acre tract of land in the G.W. Graves Survey, abstract number 246, and the Daniel McCall Survey, abstract 357, Titus County, Texas, and being part of the remainder of the certain called 50.41 acre tract of land conveyed from the state of Morris Henderson to H.E. Span by deed recorded in volume 383, page 113, deed of record, Titus County, Texas, and generally located on the north side of Tennyson Road, east of US 271, south Jefferson, and take any action necessary.
Mr. Chairman, members, the applicant, as you say, is requesting multifamily zoning with the intent to develop age-restricted apartment in this particular area. It's an age-restricted type of residential units for seniors. These are probably going to be more in terms of what we call kind of fourplexes, single-story. What they've indicated that that's what they would build. This is a company that's basically competing for the tax credit system that they do throughout the state. That's a financing or funding thing, but it has certain restrictions. They usually has income restrictions that cap income restrictions for this particular development. We've seen it. The applicant did come to the city council several months ago to get the city council to sort of back up a resolution that they needed to submit to the state for this competitive sort of bid of whatever you do when you go to the state to ask for this. So they did that. They weren't going through with it, but they told me that somebody had backed out on the process and they were up again, and they wanted to file. They kind of came in late, but they asked us to try to get this on before the middle of August if it would go. So we try to accommodate them with this zoning request on this property, and they're trying to move forward on that. So on this case, and this may be a little different because here we have this is single family. Next to it, this is the tract we're looking at, single family. We've got this, larger single family neighborhood over here, and then the single family to the north of it. So in this case, rather than zone it like the Cyber Springs where we had general retail, we wouldn't want to really, the city was not really proponent of doing that. We'd rather just really define the zoning as multifamily and not allow any other sort of commercial uses, so that we'd create at least not a potential for anything but some type of multifamily to go in there, as opposed to having any kind of commercial abutting this area over here with existing single family development. And in turn, we've looked at that a little bit. They're going to provide more what would be substantially a single story type of multifamily fourplex thing, and with internal streets. The street system will be there, landscaping and yards. So it'll have a more single family look to it, as opposed to a traditional apartment complex. That's what they intend on that section right there with this particular zoning case. So again, this is, and also just to add to that, if they were approved and they were to build it, they would be required to build some screening, actual solid screening fences between them and the other single-family residential. So we'll have that. That's actually in the code, and they're aware of that has to be put in. With that being said, this is a public hearing, I'm not sure. The applicant called me. There was a family medical crisis for him, and he couldn't drive in, so he just called me this afternoon, or let me know, he emailed me. I'll be glad to take any questions to staff that you have at this moment.
Okay, let me ask you this. So this property is gonna butt up to Allen Drive?
These streets, apparently, with their survey, they're saying that some of this didn't exist as far as platting. The survey I've got.
Well, go to this one here.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at, right there.
Well, change it. Oh, you don't have it up on the screen. Can you get it up
Oh,
on
I'm
the screen?
sorry. Yes. That's what
Okay.
it looks like, yeah.
So show me Allen Drive there. All right, and then this is and this is McMahon? Understand that, but it's gonna butt up to Allen, and then it's gonna come down Flory. Where's Flory? Or not Flory? Flory's back over there, but it's gonna hit that corner of Allen, and is that McMahon? Comes up there, so you're gonna have multifamily in here?
That's the request. That's the request for, yes, that's the request. The appraisal district shows this. This was part of potentially, I guess, when they platted this property, what I've looked at is they had a plat that kind of came all the way across. They did it in phases, but rather than what we normally would final plat out this section, and they had a plat that looked like that was for potentially proposed development, but the appraisal district has left those lot tract lines and the street lines and everything in there as though that was going to occur. It's actually never been actually platted in that configuration. It's confusing. It is the combination of all those going around the curve. I think that's an alleyway right there. I don't know that they can access off that alley there. Their property line is this red line. Yeah. Well, maybe they could if that's an actual paved alley. Possibly. They still, on this property, they still have to put up screening, though. I don't think they would access back there necessarily. They have to screen this by code. They're going to have to put an actual screening fence that's going to run along this whole entire area here and down. Well, they would be accessing from down at Tennyson into the property. Now, there'd be a road. Yeah, I haven't seen their concept plan, because this right now is just zoning. They haven't turned in anything from it. CERN. Sure.
So you can tell them that. I don't. I mean,
if it's requiring
okay. Well, I mean, are you done, Robert, or?
We don't have the concept plan they turned in. It wasn't for zoning at the time. What they turned in was for this resolution when they were trying to get the resolution to council. This came back.
So what did the council do? Did they resolution?
Yeah, they signed the resolution, but the resolution wasn't for zoning. The resolution was to say they were okay with them going forward to try to get the potential funding, the tax credit funding for it, and then they would come back and consider it. They never were bound, by the zoning. They weren't binding themselves to do that. They were saying that the idea of putting in age-restricted units there, the way they wanted to put them, the council was okay with that.
They've got to submit, of course, entries of how to utilize this piece of property, and this is just for simply letting them know or letting us know that we approve or don't approve of putting the concept or whatever, but it doesn't show how they're going to entry the property or all of that. That's still got to go before all of this again, right? Yeah.
It's got to be site plan, but I'll mention back to you, when you look at the appraisal district map, I'm not sure how it would be in the same, you might be correct, Mr. Chairman, in terms of how they might access it from the north. They might want to come through there and make it look like a residential neighborhood. The concept that I initially saw was that they were going to have some type of street that came down, and those units might sit on either side, like you would see in a normal neighborhood, except they wouldn't be single family. They'd be fourplex. They'd be fourplex units, and that's what they look like. They look like a larger home with four units in it. And then they would address their parking off the side of that. So, but I haven't gotten that concept. They have not presented it to us.
Why would it require screening if it fits into that neighborhood?
If it's multifamily, the multifamily says if you're going to have multifamily, the only way we classify this is because it's greater than like a duplex. And when it's more than those units, so with the code, the only way we can classify it as multifamily. Multifamily adjacent to residential zoning requires a solid screen to separate it.
Okay, so we have any, are you done? All right, we got public comment?
My name's Dick McCarver. My wife Dorothy and I live at 425 Tennyson Road here in Mount Pleasant, and our home is right here. I would address when we purchased the property from. We also purchased some additional lots that were platted. Here we go. We squared up the property. Wrong way. Okay. The additional lots, and this was news to me because on our tax records and everything, it calls for a portion of lots. And I had seen the plats on the property in question over here, right here. This is McMahon. There's an alley here. This is open right now, right here. This is there's a pond in here somewhere between here and the apartments. There's a block of land there. This portion in here is wooded quite a bit right in here. But that brings me to my comments here. We share about 500 feet, almost 500 feet of property with this tract of land right here. So we're very concerned. We have enjoyed living in the Southgate subdivision. We've enjoyed the single family homes, the camaraderie in the neighborhood, well manicured yards. We've enjoyed living there. It's been a good life. By now you probably guessed that I'm pretty much opposed to rezoning this property, and I would encourage you to consider not rezoning it. There was mention of the Cypress Creek apartments and traffic and how this property would be accessed. We were there in our home when those apartments were built, and there is a huge increase in the amount of traffic that goes up and down that portion of Tennyson Road. I'm really surprised that we haven't had more accidents right there at the corner of Flory and Tennyson than what we have. There have been several. I think if you were to poll all of the residents in Southgate, and not just those of us within a certain measured distance of this property, I think you would find that they would be in opposition to rezoning it as well. Now, I've been told that this commission and the city council are more concerned about economic growth and development and putting more properties on the tax roll than they are of the homeowners. But I don't believe that. I know several of you on this commission and on the city council, and I really think that you will listen to our request. I guess in closing, I would ask you if any one of you would like to have this property next door to you in your home. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. McCarver. Anybody else want to speak?
My name's Paul Collier, and I own that property, 15300. Yeah, I own that property there, and that they were talking about putting apartments. First thing hit my mind is what went on down the road. You know, I'm gonna have 2 or 3 story apartment buildings looking right in my backyard. So I'm much opposed to this. And with like he said a while ago, we've had a lot more traffic over there in our area on Allen and Tennyson and McMahon, all of those streets due to those apartments coming in. So I would just ask that you consider us, and you know, like he said a while ago, you wouldn't want these guys in your backyard either. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Anybody else would like to speak? Okay, I'm going to close the public comments and ask the members to take action or to make a motion, or I make a motion to not to rezone it. Do I hear a motion?
I will second it.
Okay, everybody say aye?
Aye.
Okay, so the property's not rezoned.
If you don't mind, we'd like to just tell the audience that the city council meeting, this does go to city council.
Right,
it
it'll
goes
go to
next
city
week.
council, so it'll be up to the city council. When they going to, next Tuesday?
Maybe next Tuesday at
So I
6:30.
encourage you to go to the city council meeting. I'm sorry. Hold the public hearing to consider request from Emanuel Glockzin, applicant for zoning change. I thought we just did that. Of single family. Different tract. Multifamily on a 5.05 acre tract of land situated in G.W. Gray's survey abstract number 246, Titus County, being all of the land conveyed to Jewel Kirby by deed recorded in volume 1588, page 84, real property records, Titus County, Texas, and generally located on the north side of Tennyson, east of US 271, and take any action necessary.
Mr. Chairman, members, again, this property is actually next door to the property that we just looked at in the zoning request. It's being brought forward by the same applicant, the same company. They were looking at both pieces of property and requested that they bring both forward for rezoning. This particular property, as I was told initially, when they would be, I think in the resolution when they asked the council about this property, they were looking at a traditional apartment complex under the same tax credit issue at that time. But this would probably be more developed, not as those single story, but this would probably be a 2 or 3 story typical unit that would go next to the Cypress Springs apartments. And that was the request. And again, the same conditions kind of apply. When we look back at the zoning map, it's same situation is that they are adjacent to the general retail, but then you've got everything in here is at the moment is zoned as SF1 single family. So sort of the same condition that you just looked at. Maybe a little bit more buffer from the single family. And again, if they were to approve this and get something there, again, that screening mechanism still would have to be imposed on them on this particular property also. So with that being said, we're glad to answer any questions of staff. It is another public hearing, and I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have. I'm not sure the applicant, again, on this one, they couldn't be here because of this family situation. I don't know if it's somebody's in the audience that might be here representing them or part of the ownership of this property. I'm not sure.
Okay. Okay. Well, we're going to open up the public comments. If anybody has any public comments on this piece of property that joins the last piece of property that we just discussed. Okay. Yes, sir.
The infrastructure and all of that would have to be probably, redone if this ever passes or whatever. But I think there needs to be a little bit more guidance too, the guy that's representing, so that we have some kind of guidance of what his plans really are, 3-story, 2-story, and then what the entrance is off and how many people he's talking about or how many apartments or any of that, and then what the infrastructure is going to, how the people are going to, affect the roads and the streets, just as they were saying too. I don't know which way they're coming in, which way they're coming out. I know this is just a zoning type of deal, but at the end of the day, I think we need a better concept of the whole thing. Don't you agree?
Again, I'll tell you what the story is on both these tracks, really. They're not going to get funding on both of these tracks. What the whole scenario is that they were in the bidding process, and I think what I'm understanding is the person or the entity that was in front of them that actually were able to get the opportunity to get this particular whatever the bid on whatever they were doing at the state level, they fell off. So this was an opportunity at the very 11th hour for them to put it back on, and that's what they did. They waited as long as they could, and they asked if we could get these properties. The property owners were on board with this, the actual owners of the property. So there was probably, I told them, the situation that we could get it on. The outcome without enough information is pretty hard for you guys to really review it. I agree. I don't disagree. And again, it's only one of those properties that would get developed if it even got developed, if it even got by this. But if they don't get that answer in probably within the next week, then they're probably out of the running to do either one of these things at the moment. So that's just the information I've got.
Okay, do we have anybody else that want any public comments or? Okay. I make a motion not to rezone this property. Do I?
Second.
That's it.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Now we go to number 8, the planning director's report.
Don't really have anything other than I wanted to tell you guys about the comprehensive plan. We got that done tonight, and so we're walking down that path now and kind of getting there, so appreciate all y'all's input and help, and it'll take about a year probably to get through this thing, but we'll get through it, and hopefully everybody will be here still, so.
All right, thank you, Robert. All right, your motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you.